Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another Gran Turismo 7 car review. Now we are continuing the mini series within a series, reviewing all of the Nissan Skyline cars within Gran Turismo 7, and that does include the GTR. Although it's not, exactly a Skyline, it does carry the GTR badge on further. So we are currently on the road going version of the R34 Skyline GTR. Loved by almost everyone, is this car any good within Gran Turismo 7, or does it fall a little bit flat? Now there's two ways to actually buy this car. You can actually buy it brand new from the Nissan dealership for 450,000 credits, which is just absolutely crazy. The JDM tax is real. Or you can actually currently buy it used. The one that's in the used dealer has around about 13,000 miles on it, and it's going for 401,300 credits. So, a little bit of a price difference. Up to you which one you want to go for. The used one will rotate in and out of that dealership. Now, if you've never joined me for a car review, let me tell you how this will go down. So for road going cars that can be modified and such, which the R34 can be, quite obviously, I'll talk about that later, we'll basically take the bog standard version, no tuning, no upgrade parts, and throw it around the Nordschleifer to see where it comes on our lap time leaderboard. Then we'll fully modify it as much as we possibly can. Again, no tuning allowed, so I'm allowed to throw all the parts on, but I cannot then go and fine tune it. It has to be how it is once it's got all its parts on it, and then we'll take it for a hot lap around the high speed ring. So to be quite honest, this car really does need no introduction. I think everybody knows what this car is. The R34 Skyline GTR. Yeah, pretty much known around the world as probably the most iconic JDM car that's ever lived, alongside probably, I'd say, the A80 Toyota Supra. So what makes this car absolutely special? What makes people absolutely love this car? And to be honest, it's probably the tuning scene. Now, some of the most popular car videos on the entire internet are 1,000 brake horsepower Nissan GTRs, and it's always mainly the R34 that people go to. Then you've got the likes of the Too Fast Too Furious movie. I remember when that dropped back in the day, the silver Skyline with the blue stickers all over it. People absolutely fell in love with that car, and I just remember like all the kids at school were talking about that silver Skyline and how one day they were going to own one. Yeah, pretty crazy. There is a long line of why people love this car. However, it's a strange one in my opinion. Whereas the R32 is so legendary because it was so good on track, because of how popular this car is within the tuning and street scene, a lot of people forget just how good this thing was at racing. So as you may know, there is another version of the R34 in the game, that being the GT500 model. Obviously, in all its racing glory, it did go on to win the Super GT Championship in that year. I believe it was 1999, if I'm not wrong. Possibly 2000, but I'm pretty certain it was 1999 that that car won the championship. So it is a successful race car. But I just feel like the days of that are really forgotten, if anything. If you're not really into the world of, I guess touring car racing or GT racing, you may just assume that this was just a cool modified car. It didn't really have its heritage on the track like the R32 GTR did. But it was very successful and an absolute machine, both street and track. But how does it perform within Gran Turismo 7? Now, if you remember rightly, I went back to the R33 GTR, which I reviewed previously, and said I was pleasantly surprised because I feel like it took everything from the R32 GTR and made it really good. And in fact, in my opinion, that was one of the best looking GTRs ever made, which is a bit of a controversial statement considering that car is classed as the ugly duckling, and that's probably where I'm going to get a lot of flack for this. I don't particularly like the look of the R34 GTR. Whilst it is no doubt a very good looking car, I don't hold it in high regards as one of the best looking GTR badged cars. I feel like it just looks a bit too of a, I guess, a bit of a Frankenstein car, whereas the R32 and the R33 and even the R31, which is kind of in the game but isn't, all kind of look the same and have that specific look. I just feel like the R33 R34 kind of went a completely different direction. Yes, it retains the iconic rear lights, those, you know, double circled lights, but up front, I wouldn't say it just looks like a GTR. It doesn't look like anything before it. It was kind of the car going in a whole different direction. It's a lot beefier and a lot more bulkier. And I feel when it's kind of in its bog standard form, whilst it looks very pretty, it's just definitely not the best looking GTR. And I know that is going to be very controversial, but honestly, it's just not to my personal taste. And that's not saying it's an ugly car. Of course it's not. It's a very good looking car, but it's definitely not the best looking of the GTR cars that's, you know, ever been. In my opinion, I feel the more I look at an R33, that really does begin to appeal to me, or definitely the R32. For me, that is just, you know, retains its simplicity, but still looks the absolute part. Now, let's talk about this car in its bog standard form. How does it drive within GT7? And in all honesty, it's very similar to the R33, but again, just weightier. So whilst the R33 felt weightier than the R32, the R34 feels weightier than the R33, and that's not really a bad thing. Again, driving these cars only days apart really means that you kind of have to adapt. You're expecting one thing when you've been in one and you go into the next one, but then it'll feel completely different. However, in terms of this car, that extra weight is definitely there. Sometimes it genuinely does feel a bit too weighty. I don't know if that's just the feeling in game, but it really does feel like quite a bit of a brute when you're trying to throw it around the corners. However, in terms of its drivability, this is such an easy car to drive. You can really just throw this thing around and you'll know you'll catch it. You know, it never feels like it's going to take anything away from you. And I feel like this is the moment where the GTR really turned into the PlayStation generation, as Jeremy Clarkson would say, and really became like this whole, you know, rolling computer. It's a very sophisticated car. You know, it doesn't feel like it's ever going to let you get completely out of hand. Even with all assists turned off, you feel like you are constantly having your hand held. And that's why I would say in its standard form, this is not the most fun GTR to drive. It's very kind of, I guess, sensible feeling, especially when you've been in some of the older cars, which, whilst yes, they're very advanced for the time, definitely feel like, you know, there is that chance that you could quite easily throw yourself into the barrier, where this car definitely keeps you comfortable and safe. Definitely in terms of its performance, it doesn't feel like as big of a jump as the R33 felt to the R32. You know, you've got the four-wheel drive, it accelerates very, very quickly, and it gets up to a decent speed, but it definitely doesn't feel that much quicker than the R33, and with that being the most recent reviewed car, that is where I'm going to really draw the comparisons. Obviously, the exact same that I did with the R33 to the R32. The kind of generational leap doesn't feel like it's there in terms of the R34. It's standard anyway, so that's going to bring me onto the modified version. But before we get into that, let's check out how it did around the Nordschleife. So this is how it did. It's the first GTR, or the road-going version of the GTR badged cars, that has dropped into the 7-minute barrier. So it came in with a 7-minute 59.352 in third place overall in our 500 category, just a little bit off the RS Club Sport and then 911 GT3 from 2001, which isn't too shabby if you ask me. The next car below that was the R33, which comes in 7th place with an 8 minutes 4. So let's move on to what most people know this car for. Even non-car people will probably know what this car's all about. The modified high-powered versions. Now, the R32 we originally did just under a week ago, 712 horsepower, I believe, with the R33 at 750. This thing is putting out nearly 800 brake horsepower on that RB26 motor, and it's absolutely fantastic for it. And I'll explain why as we go through our lap. So let's head to the high speed ring and do our modified lap time. Now, in terms of this car, when it is fully upgraded, this is definitely where this car stands out apart from the rest by a massive margin. It's absolutely fantastic. You know, even with the extra weight and such that kind of naturally comes with this car, when you've got all the weight reduction and all the kind of horsepower pushed through this thing, it actually feels like it can really handle it. And that's why this car is just absolutely fantastic. It can handle that power no problem. Through the corners, it feels completely, you know, planted. It's very, very strange. And even when it does get wobbly out of corners and you're trying to throw nearly all 800 brake horsepower down with no assists on, even if it gets out of hand, you are going to be able to catch it. It is honestly absolutely amazing, and that's probably where most people are going to absolutely get the most pleasure from this car within GT7. Fully modified with all the upgrades on, it's basically unmatchable. I was very much surprised how much of an all-around amazing machine this is when it's fully strapped up and ready to go. So yes, in terms of being modified, this is the best of the bunch, you know, beating the likes of the R33 and the R32. So let's go and check out where it comes overall on our modified lap time board. It comes in third place ahead of the R33. As you can see, it got a 104.757 even with that slip and slide in the tunnel, and it is faster than the R33 and the R32, just coming a little bit slower than the Giulia GTA Am, the GTM and the Bugatti Chiron. So an absolutely fantastic time from the car in the 1 minute fours. Brilliant all-around machine. So should you buy this car within Gran Turismo 7? Well, of course you should. At the end of the day, it is an absolute motoring icon. Even if, you know, the whole JDM scenes absolutely push this car to a godlike status and it may not quite hit those highs. Overall, when this thing is fully modified and you're running extreme power through it, it is a fantastic car to behold and feels absolutely amazing within the game. So that is going to be it from me. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Next up, we'll be moving on to the GTR. There's a few models of that car in game, so it'll be interesting to test those ones out. Thank you so much. Check out my sponsors down below, as well as my Discord, my Twitter, and my donation link. As always, have a great day. Stay safe. Peace.